Millions know the film The Thing as a classic horror story about a confrontation with an aggressive extraterrestrial life form. But in the classified archives of the Contour Division, this incident is logged under the codename Patient Zero. And according to the analysis of the wreckage and biological samples, the fundamental mistake made by the personnel of U.S. Outpost 31 was looking toward the stars. The threat had been waiting beneath their feet the entire time. The official, publicly available version of events, presented in the 1982 film, depicts a team of American polar researchers encountering an alien capable of perfectly imitating other organisms. This version is a convenient and simplistic cover story, concealing a far more disturbing truth. Contour Division analysts, after gaining access to fragmentary data from the Norwegian Tool Station and Outpost 31, concluded that the object found in the ice was not a spacecraft. Its design was inconsistent with interstellar travel. It was a highly advanced sarcophagus, a containment vessel, and the anomaly within was not a visitor from space, but the oldest and most perfect life form on Earth. It is theorized to be a biological weapon designed and buried by a forgotten proto-civilization millions of years ago. Therefore, the incident in Antarctica was not a first contact, it was a reawakening. The analysis of the vessel itself is key. It lacked any form of heat shielding necessary for atmospheric entry, possessed no visible propulsion systems, and its internal layout, a series of concentric rings leading to a central core, resembled a multi-layered vault, not a cockpit. This was a prison, engineered for eternal quarantine, a task at which it failed only after geological time eroded its power source and allowed the entity within to send out a faint biological whisper. The Norwegians, with their more advanced seismic equipment, didn't just find a UFO, they detected a breach in a tomb. The analysis of the incident must begin with the cascading series of containment failures, starting with the Norwegians. Their chaotic arrival at Outpost 31 was not an act of madness, but the final, desperate phase of their own failed protocol. The use of thermite charges documented in the ruins of their base was not for excavation, it was for sterilization. They were attempting to cauterize the site. The frantic helicopter chase was not an attempt to kill a simple dog, but to eliminate a bioagent before it could reach a new host population. Their failure to communicate was a tragedy of language barriers, their warnings misread as aggression. The American team, by neutralizing the Norwegian operative, unknowingly dismantled the last line of defense. They didn't just save a dog, they actively invited Patient Zero into their home. The asset, now designated the Agent, initiated its primary programming. Its initial phase within the station was not passive, but tactical. The dog's quiet wandering was a period of reconnaissance. It mapped the facility's layout, identified the personnel roster, observed the social hierarchy, and assessed the technological capabilities of its new environment. It was performing an intelligence sweep before initiating its infiltration protocol. The first documented manifestation, the assimilation of the sled dogs, was not a chaotic attack, but a biological test run. This was the agent's calibration phase. The grotesque, multi-limbed form witnessed by the team was the result of a rapid, imperfect replication process using dissimilar canine genetics. It was a biological miscalculation, but one from which the agent learned a critical lesson. Future assimilations must be covert, silent, and perfect. The screams and flames were unwanted attention. From that moment on, the infiltration would be invisible. The central figure in understanding the true nature of the threat was the biologist Blair. No, that is the public record. The central figure was the biologist Blair. His reaction, which the others dismissed as panic and insanity, was the only scientifically logical response. After studying the cellular behavior of the recovered remains, he was the first to grasp the mathematical and biological certainty of their fate. He understood he was not dealing with a predator, but with a cellular parasite operating on a macroscopic scale, an epidemiological nightmare. His computer simulations, which predicted total global assimilation within 27,000 hours of reaching civilization, were not paranoid delusions. They were a cold, rational forecast based on the observed replication rate. His subsequent actions, the destruction of all communication and transportation equipment, were not acts of sabotage. They were a desperate, unilateral attempt to re-establish the quarantine that had been so catastrophically breached. By destroying the radios and tractors, Blair was attempting to enforce the scorched earth protocol that the situation demanded. He sacrificed the team and himself to isolate the threat from the 7 billion potential hosts outside of Antarctica. When the team locked Blair away, they effectively neutralized the one man who had correctly identified the rules of engagement. From this point, the incident shifts into its most effective phase, psychological warfare. The agent, having assimilated at least one team member, now weaponizes the most potent tool against a closed social system: paranoia. It doesn't need to attack, it needs only to exist. Its presence fractures trust, the binding agent of human society. The command structure collapses. Gary, the commander, is systematically discredited not by the agent's actions, but by the seeds of suspicion it allows to grow. His authority evaporates, forcing the reluctant pilot McCready into a leadership role he is not equipped for. McCready's famous blood test is a moment of brilliant tactical improvisation, a diagnostic tool born of desperation. Using a heated copper wire, he forces a sample from each man to reveal its true nature. The test works, exposing Palmer as an imitation, but it is a reactive, not a proactive victory. It identifies the current threat, but offers no insight into who has already been compromised and is simply waiting, or who will be next. The test itself becomes another source of terror, a ritual of execution that further shreds the team's morale. An even more chilling possibility, logged in the contour analysis, is that the agent learned from this test. A creature that can master cellular biology in hours could certainly evolve a method to defeat such a primitive diagnostic, making any future encounters exponentially more dangerous. The agent's tactics are subtle. The discovery of torn clothing bearing a name tag, the strategic disappearance and reappearance of personnel, these are not random events. They are calculated moves designed to frame the innocent and escalate mutual distrust. The agent forces the humans to become its unwitting executioners. It doesn't need to kill them all. It only needs to make them kill each other until the remaining few are isolated, terrified, and easy to assimilate. Contour analyses classify the strategy as induced social apoptosis, or programmed group death. The agent attacks the bonds between the men, and the men, in turn, tear each other apart. The final stage of the incident is not a monster hunt. It is a sterilization protocol. When McCready, Childs, and Gary move to plant the explosives, they are unconsciously fulfilling the original purpose of the ancient vessel they discovered. If containment is breached, the site must be cauterized. The massive, grotesque creature that erupts from beneath the floorboards, the so-called Blair thing, is not its true form or a final attack. It is the agent's last-ditch survival strategy. Exposed and cornered, it consolidates all of its acquired biomass into creating a single, massive arc. This entity is not designed for combat. It is designed for resilience. It's an attempt to build a biological fortress, a new containment vessel of its own making, capable of withstanding the explosions and hibernating through the cold, preserving enough genetic material to restart the assimilation cycle at a later date. MacReady's final act of detonating the explosives is not just him killing a monster. It is him destroying the agent's lifeboat. He is completing the work started millions of years ago by the vessel's original unknown builders. The final scene. Two survivors, MacReady and Childs, sit amongst the burning ruins of their world. The temperature plummets. The question hanging in the freezing air, who is human, is now irrelevant. The quarantine protocol has simply entered its final, passive phase. If one or both are compromised, they have no transportation, no shelter, and no escape. They have only the Antarctic cold, the very same environmental factor that served as the agent's prison for eons. The silence from Outpost 31 is absolute, but the Contour Division does not consider this case closed. The file remains open. They know that ice is the perfect preservative, and there is no guarantee that another drilling team, years or decades from now, will not once again pierce the frozen skin of the Earth and awaken something that was never looking down from the stars, because it was always here, waiting. Now you know this story, and this knowledge, like any strange signal, leaves its own trace. Perhaps you felt that same chill. Perhaps you saw what others missed. Our archive is not just about facts. It is about the feelings they provoke. Share your thoughts below. We read everything. To ensure you don't miss the next signal from the darkness, stay on this frequency. Subscribe. End of transmission.